We should probably get started. So for this section of the conference, we're going to have the Ignites, which are always fun, from our brave Ignite speakers. Don't look at that. Pretend that's not there. So we're going to start off with that. Then we're going to have a word from our sponsors, or for some of our sponsors at least. And then we're going to move into the open spaces planning. So I hope you've all got your ideas ready for that. So to start off with Ignites, we're going to have Gavin Campbell. Gavin, do you want to come up? And he's going to start where you sit, rather, not where we sit. So let me, no, there's a little switch on it. Do you want to go?
Okay.
Cool. So let me know when you're ready and I'll start you off.
Right, thank you. If there's anyone in the audience who knows what digital transformation is actually supposed to mean, I'd like to talk to you afterwards, because this has been in my job title, I think, and it's still a bit of a mystery. But anyway, I got the idea for this talk from a poem, which start where you stand and never mind the past. The past won't help you in beginning new. If you've left it all behind at last, why, that's enough. You're done with it. You're through. So this is about change and transformation. And transformation means consultants. Now, if you're a DevOps consultant, in particular if you're a sponsor, this isn't about you, right? This is about those other consultants. And we know the ones I mean, right? I mean the ones that do things like this. Now, there's a few things wrong here. The 4-hour meeting about the Gantt chart starts at 12 o'clock. Like, who does that, right? Some people down the front here don't believe that this actually happened to me at a real client. Right? Now, in any talk about DevOps, you have to have a reference to Conway's Law. And the reason it's here is to emphasize that DevOps is all about this enterprise-wide paradigm shift in which we refactor the corporate structure to mirror the serverless, containerized microservices we had in our BPMN diagram, and we tear up the organizational chart in favor of squads and chapters, because Spotify do that, which means it's entirely appropriate for our company that makes buggy whips and horse brasses. But we're not going to tear up that Gantt chart, right? We charge the client 30 grand for the Gantt chart. In the end, the story ends the same way. The consultant sails off into the sunset, whilst the enterprise DevOps transformation is dashed on the rocks of despair. But is there another way? A way we can do all by ourselves, using the resources already at our disposal, starting from where we sit, in the cubicle, not at the executive agile retreat. What can we do with the tools we already have to make things better for ourselves? I have another quotation, a fairly well-known one, from Admiral Grace Hopper, who said, "It's easier to ask forgiveness than it is to get permission." Now, Grace Hopper was the inventor of the compiler, so if it wasn't for her, none of us would be sitting here. We'd be doing proper jobs like shearing sheep or making baskets. Now, what happens when we try to ask forgiveness rather than getting permission? Well, really? Well, you know, Grace Hopper didn't work at Spotify either. She was in the Navy, and she was working on the UNIVAC computer in like 1950-something, and it didn't turn out all that badly. So how do we avoid that dreaded pink slip? Well, by thinking about the blast radius. So the blast radius is a jargony term, right? That means the number of things we're likely to break by making a change. So we reduce the blast radius by trying to do small things in a controlled way that we can control from where we sit. So in the context of doing small things, how might we do, for example, these 3 ways, which you'll be familiar with from the Phoenix project, like increasing flow and shortening feedback cycles and creating a culture of learning? Well, we increase flow by removing bottlenecks. Even if we don't have that automation of a data center, who's to say we can't have it on the desktop? So at least that environment is deployed in like a sane, repeatable way. And even if we have to have the 24-month Gantt chart, we don't actually have to use it to manage our own daily work. Anyone here ever get in trouble at work for having too many tests? Well, no, right? And the tools are out there to use. Do we really have to ask permission to stop passing defects downstream? And what about culture? Now, this is harder. Why don't we start simply? By getting rid of the blame game, yeah? By making it okay to slip up, by being nice to one another. What does that cost? Or adding instrumentation to figure out what we want to change. And where does this lead? Well, you know what? Even if the bosses, the big ones, are too busy like filling in RACI charts and expense forms to notice what you're doing, what happens is that the other teams around you do notice and start to do some of those same things and start to model their behaviors on yours. Another way to think of this is that doing the right thing leads to accruing this thing we call political capital, which is a metaphor really for influence and authority and trust and all those great things. But what's really the point? Well, the point of having any kind of capital is so that we can spend it or invest it. And we want to spend it on doing the right thing. And the right thing, in the context of this political capital we've generated where we sit, is to spend it on influencing working practices, or even just helping others, or even transforming the working environment to make things better for ourselves. I mean, in the end, right, who cares about the enterprise-wide DevOps paradigm shift if we can make our own working lives a little bit less awful by doing a few things in the right way? I'll finish with some more from the poem. The world won't care about your old defeats if you can start anew and win success. The future is your time, and time is fleet, and there is much of work and strain and stress. Thank you for listening. I was Gavin Campbell.
Thank God.